As always, thanks for joining. Today I'm going to be talking about my 2023 turkey season here in Michigan. I was able to start the year off with access to 270 acres of some private property, which I was super geeked about. I've been listening to a podcast for a long time called Shedding Light Outdoors Podcast. If you want to check those guys out, Travis on there, been listening to him for a long time, and one of the things that he's done to gain access on private land was to send out letters. Instead of door knocking, much less obtrusive is just send letters, and it's easy to do. Find the properties you want, send them letters. So I've done that over the past 3 seasons. I've sent out probably 125 plus letters. Well, this year I was finally able to gain my very first permission property because of that. I was able to have access to 270 acres, which is awesome. So the reason I was able to gain that access, though, was because I only wanted to turkey hunt. I figured that's way less obtrusive, and there's already so many people deer hunting, and sure enough, that is what got me access to this. He says if I had asked to deer hunt, that would have been a no-go for him, but he was always open to letting someone come and turkey hunt because he didn't and no one else did in his family. So I was able to gain access to turkey hunt this property, and it turned out to be a great property for doing that. So opening day, me and my brother Nate, we were hunting in one of the fields that the owner thought would be a good field to hunt in. We picked the wrong field, but had lots of action. We had tons of deer, and then ended up seeing 2 toms, a jake, and about 4 or 5 hens all in this field that was about 400 yards away. But we watched those guys for about an hour, and I finally couldn't take it any longer. I snuck out of the blind, walked around, and ended up army crawling for about 150 yards trying to sneak up on these birds. Unfortunately, while I was doing that, they just continued to walk away from me, so I was never able to get a shot off or anything, but still was kind of a fun little try at getting these birds. Went out the following morning and several other times after that, but I wasn't able to finally get anything done until last night. On May 3rd, I ended up driving straight from work. I got out of work early, headed straight out to the property I had permission on. It was about a 45-minute drive. As I was getting onto the dirt road of the property, ended up seeing some turkeys that were crossing the road. Those turkeys were headed to the side of the road that I was going to be hunting on, so I knew I had to make it there quick. So I stopped, I let those turkeys cross, and I'm glad I did because there was several jakes and then a big old tom that come following them on. So I booked it to the property. I got all my gear out. I had to scare 2 hens off of that field, which you got to do what you got to do. I had to get out there. I got my blind positioned up where I thought would be best, right down from this creek. And sure enough, about an hour later, 2 hens popped out by that creek opening. Unfortunately, they started working their way away from me. Well, about a half hour later, those 2 hens popped back out, only this time they were followed by the rest of the group, and there had to have been about 12 to 14 birds there. And thankfully, they were headed my way, ended up coming up the creek and finally crossing over that creek and out into the field. And I was super pumped. They're out in the field probably about 25 to 30 yards away, and I picked the biggest jake. There may have been a good-sized tom following, but I just wasn't sure, and I wasn't willing to risk this opportunity that I've been going after for 4 years. So got the gun, popped out the blind window, and was just ready, taking a deep breath, squeeze that trigger, and nothing happens. I was deflated. So I pulled that gun back in super slowly. Those birds were on edge. Popped that round out, and sure enough, the striker had hit the primer, but that shell did not go off. So slowly racked a new shell in. Ended up moving positions, got down on my knees in the blind, and ended up lining up on the biggest jake there. Pulled the trigger. And I made contact, and that bird flew off, and the rest of the birds kind of slowly left the field. Took a second shot in the air, which was kind of a dumb move on my part. It was useless. But that bird ended up landing about 90 yards behind me. Seemed like forever, but finally made up my mind what I was going to do. I debated for a long time. Was I going to pick that blind up and like Elmer Fudd or something, slowly tiptoe my way with the blind towards that bird, or was I just going to get out and chase it? finally made the decision I was going to unzip that door, wait till he was facing away from me, and just book it. And I'd had the camera set up on the bird so I could see all that happening, but unfortunately I bumped the camera and it ended up moving. But I ended up running out after this bird, and you can hear me. I'm running through some really thick, muddy terrain that is just filled with water because it's been raining the past week. But chased that bird for almost 200 yards. And finally got within 30 yards of him and just put a finishing round on him, and he dropped right there. And I tell you what, I was so excited. I was super winded, didn't realize how out of shape I was. I will have to say, it only took me 36 seconds to get there, and that's not terrible. I am out of breath, but turkey down. All right, it is May 3rd. Finally able to close the deal. First turkey. It's not a big old tom. It's a good sized Jake though. Super geeked. First bird for me. It's a Jake, but I'm just super excited. He's got himself a beard here. You know, he's still got a maybe 4 or 5 inch beard. So I'm super excited about that. Got to finish out the turkey season here. Might have time to go stop by the homeowner, thank him for letting us use the property. Might be able to come back out with my brother, but thanks for sticking around, and as always, we'll see you next time.